All right, we are live. No intro video this morning.
So are you able to see comments?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we had quite a few people on this morning. That was great.
It was really good. That's why I was like, let me see if I can jump in. I found like this whole like producers section from Facebook's suite and stuff. So I just jumped on the back end there and see what we could get. I mean, there was a lot of good questions there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't get to all of them. So we have 2 people on, right?
Yep, I'm seeing 2, 3, 4. So people are jumping back in.
Awesome.
No, so that question that I sent you, or that was a comment that was left by another funeral director on one of the videos that I posted yesterday afternoon through that 4-part question and answer series.
Okay.
And essentially, what they're taking away is that we're sharing things that we should only be discussing in like a peer-to-peer setting. We shouldn't be having these conversations with the uneducated public. And like I said, I respectfully disagree. Knowledge is power. Again, this is not something that people are forced to watch. That if they don't want to watch something that we're discussing, they scroll on to the next reel. And I mean, we went back and forth for like 2.5 hours last night about opposing viewpoints. So it'd be interesting to see. And, we normally always do get that type of feedback, but it happened.
Right. Well, again, like you said, it's a choice. You don't have to watch. You don't have to listen. You don't have to follow us on our page. But there are people out there that genuinely want to know and they want to understand. I think there's also this fear of funeral homes and what we do behind the closed doors of a funeral home. And the more we talk about it, people realize, hey, you know what? It's not that bad. Maybe I do want a viewing. Maybe I do want to be embalmed before, being cremated. But now I truly understand that there is value in a viewing, and I really should give my loved ones the opportunity to view me one last time before I'm cremated. They need that. They need that to start the healthy grief process.
Yeah, and again, like we say, a lot of people, when it goes back to misconceptions and one of the things that were said, one of the comments she said is that, there are techniques and chemical formulations or combinations that she uses that she would never disclose in a public environment, but only in a private location or a private group with just licensees. And my question is this: if everything you are doing is ethical, you're staying to your morals, then what is it that you're doing that we cannot openly discuss with anyone?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's like, okay, that raises a little bit of a red flag, in my opinion.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Catherine says, but that is exactly why it's shrouded in taboo and awkwardness. And that is 100% right.
Yep.
So is it sunny down there?
It comes and it goes. It was very nice yesterday. It was crappy on Tuesday. I don't know. Nate and Max went down to the beach, so I'll head down after this. And then I think Tuesday we went to Rehoboth and walked around. It was just not the nicest beach day.
It's very gloomy back here at home. Very gloomy.
Is it hot?
Right now it's not, but I got a feeling as the day goes on, like we're supposed to have thunderstorms starting at 1 and going through. So
okay. Yeah, I'll be ready to get back. We're gonna leave Friday night, get back Saturday. It's been a little over a week now, and I hit my my vacation peak at a week. I'm ready to get home after that.
Now, is it that like you just want to get back home to your own bed, or are you itching to get back in the office?
Well, the bed. The bed here is not very comfortable. Nathan and I both agreed it's like sleeping on a cardboard box. And I love what we do at work. And I'm very proud of what we do at work, and I want to get back to that.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you guys are,
I'm also,
and you guys are busy.
yes, we were talking about that in the beginning of the first video. We left thinking, okay, things are going to quiet down. We can leave, which we can. Even if we were busy on Wednesday, we could have, because we have two very capable funeral directors at our funeral home that take care of those families. In fact, I got a really nice text last night from one of the family members just complimenting Chad and just said how great he's been to work with. And it's nice to hear that, to get that feedback. We love getting feedback from families, but going into a holiday weekend, I can't say I was surprised. It's not just the Christmas and Thanksgiving holiday that can be busy. It can be the summer holidays as well at a funeral home.
And I'm honestly surprised it was not busier because of the heat wave.
Yes. Yeah.
So did you talk about the fact that what 3 years in a row?
I didn't. No. So we won Best of York on Tuesday night for our 3rd year in a row. That was wonderful. And that all started the year. Let me think about this. Was it our first year that we bought the funeral home, or was it was 2024? Yeah, because I think we had already gone through the voting period in 23 by the time we bought the funeral home. So in 24, Nate said, let's enter this contest to win the best funeral home / crematory. And I said, we're not gonna win. And we only had a couple days left in the first voting round. And he said, well, let's give it a shot and see. So I put some videos out on Facebook, and we ended up being one of the finalists. And we were sitting there at the event, our first year in business, and we won. And actually, there was a funeral home in our area who had won for 22 years in a row. So we took that from them. But, you can't get comfortable and assume that you're just going to continue winning year after year. You have to work for it. And so we do every year. I constantly promote it. We talk about it on social media, and won our 2nd year in business and our 3rd year. So that was very exciting. And Addie and Chad represented us on Tuesday night. And Addie and Chad looked awesome. They sent us pictures. They were all dressed up. So, yeah. I'm seeing some comments.
So Linda said, I figured you two would get a kick out of this. And knowing I'm in mortuary school, but I have to do a podcast for one of my classes for a project, and my topic is burial versus cremation. Which would you choose and why? So I thought the best place to gather information was Facebook, and I was honestly expecting mixed answers, but surprisingly, most people just want cremation. And even more surprising to me is that what they were explaining in their answers was they want direct cremation. We see that through the professional trends that cremation continues to rise year after year. And I think a lot of folks, when they come to the funeral home and they make arrangements at the funeral home and they have the contract there, and then they turn around and then they have to go to the cemetery, and then the price is at the cemetery. It's again, it just adds more and more to, the financial burden at that point. So a lot of people just opt for cremation, and we're seeing a lot of people opting for, even though we're just handling a direct cremation, that the family is still having a celebration of life or a memorial service. It's just the funeral home's not involved.
What do you want for yourself?
A full traditional, but then cremation.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I want traditional burial with a viewing, and I want to be buried in a cemetery. No cremation.
Yeah, full traditional. And again, it's just one of those things I look at. It's like, I don't, and I think it varies based on the person, but I know when I go and take a funeral to a cemetery, I very rarely ever see people actually at the cemetery visiting a loved one. And it's sad,
Mm-hmm.
So, and I told Michelle, put me on the mantle, and if you ever get remarried, I'm going to haunt you.
That's evil. She should be allowed to move on.
If you ever get remarried, I'm going to haunt you.
That's funny. Yeah, I think it's just, you ask any funeral director and you're going to get mixed responses, but I think as licensed professionals who do what we do day in and day out, we do know that there is value in that viewing. So I actually find more directors want a viewing than not.
Yeah, I mean, uh, through mortuary school, we know the science and or the psychology behind the importance of that
Yeah.
chance to say goodbye. Um, let's talk about this one. I just saw it from Amy. When my dad passed away in 2015 from a stroke here in Australia, he had staples in his head. We asked if they could be covered with the staples up, or could we bring in a hat to cover them? And they were very rude about it and said, "Why would you want them covered? He's going to be buried, so no one will see them."
That's terrible.
Wow.
That should
Yeah.
never have
Now,
been said.
as a matter of fact, that the funeral director, the embalmer, that should have been a conversation they had with you about covering those or
Yeah.
restoration efforts, depending on how much hair was on your dad's head. I am
Mhm.
so sorry you had that experience.
Yeah. Catherine replied back and she said, terrible service. That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? Let's talk about Vanessa's comment.
My grandma was cremated and I struggled with not getting closure. My mom has pre planned her funeral and will be cremated, but I explained to her I would like to have a viewing beforehand for a sense of closure. I never knew that was an option until recently. Thank you for educating the general public. Exactly. And that's what the education portion is about. So people
Yeah.
know their options.
So I did get a comment the other day, or it was more of a question, and the person wanted to know if I have pre-planned my funeral and prepaid for it, can my family go in and change things when I die? What is your answer?
Technically, technically, we are supposed to be bound by the written wishes of the deceased. So that is what we are contracted to do. However, the loved one that has passed away is not going to sue me. The next of kin that wants to make changes will sue me. So it's trying to have an explanation and talking to them, but at the end of the day, if you do something that the next of kin doesn't want you to do, irregardless if it's pre-planned or not, you're in trouble. So if they want to change it, they could change it. Now, if they're changing it in the hopes of being able to get finances back or money back, trying to do something along those lines, to me, if we're making changes, we are no longer contracted for the original services. So
Yep.
everything would be charged at today's current price, which means you're probably going to end up owing money to the funeral home at that point, depending on how long the pre-arrangement was. And the second portion to that is if the loved one who passed away was under state assistance, the state is entitled to those funds first. So any refund would be made back to the estate of the loved one, so that any creditors or anyone that had claim against this estate would be able to retrieve those funds first before any refund was sent to the family. But I mean, that's a tricky situation. But the next of kin is the one who has the authority to handle things.
Right.
Yeah, it depends on the law of the state, though. So, like Maryland, technically, a pre-need is the written wishes, and that supersedes the wishes of anyone else. So, if that were to happen and we were to ever be called into court in Maryland, Maryland law says X. So we're following the rule of the law. But do we, as the funeral home, want to get pulled into litigation and that type of nightmare and that bad press?
Yeah.
So it's the funeral director really needs to be a funeral director and direct and come to find a happy median there, in my opinion.
Right. Another one that I want to talk about. Now, I got this on my personal page, and I'm going to do a separate video I record with Disrupt next week or the following week. So this video will go out in August, but I want to talk about it here. So Nate and I, we were at a restaurant the other night, and we walked outside because it's always really pretty there. We take pictures there, and we're standing there taking a selfie, and some lady comes up and said, "Hey, Catherine." And I'm like, "Do we know each other?" And she says, "I follow you on social media. They're from Spring Grove." So that was pretty cool. So again, social media. But she works for Life Path Christian Ministries in York, and we provide homeless services to the York County community, she says. We have seen an increase in older adults needing services and have had several who were end of life and passed away in the shelter. I have not seen you address this on your blog. So I should have said that she messaged me on my Facebook the following day. Mm-hmm. So I've not seen you address this issue on your blog. I would love the opportunity to provide a tour of our shelter and provide information on Life Paths services. But oddly enough, after she sent me this message the other morning, we got a call at the funeral home, and it was a gentleman who was getting pricing for his cousin who had passed that was homeless. And, let's talk a little bit about this. What happens if someone passes that doesn't have any money or they have no family? I know for us in York County, the county will provide up to a certain amount of assistance.
So I know, no family. And again, this comes back to, as funeral directors, we do not have a duty to investigate. If someone contacts us and says there's absolutely no family or anything like that, and, I know you do it, I know I do it. We still do due diligence. We'll do, a quick Google search to see if there's any obituaries to try and link people together, just to make sure we're covering the funeral home and ourselves as individual licensees. But if somebody's doing it, we take their word for that fact. And, if they want to step up and, handle a cremation or some type of arrangements or a direct burial, they're more than welcome to do that. But if you can put together that there's some estranged family member or something along those lines, everything comes to a halt until we can get that figured out. But, there are very minimal resources for financial assistance for funerals. Yeah. So, it's one of those, if you're financially blessed and able to do that for that person, that's fantastic. If you're not financially able to, I know down what York County, if they're not claimed by anyone, it's a coroner's case, and the coroner handles the cremation. Then what does the coroner do with the cremated remains once they're received back, Catherine? Do you know?
So oddly enough, our coroner in York County, they have started putting stuff out on their Facebook page when they're looking for next of kin for individuals. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we saw several names on their Facebook page, and the one name looked, it was a family that we had served, basically. We did due diligence on our end, but they didn't have next of kin information for this individual that they had in their care. And so we contacted the coroner and we said, we think we have found someone, and it was a family member, and they ended up coming in to the funeral home to arrange with us, but this was a funeral expense that they were not expecting to have to pay for. So this is why pre-arranging, pre-funding funeral services, no matter what it is, it's so important.
And here's the thing too, if there are no legal next of kin, that you have no family, you're the last person or something like that, do due diligence to put things in order for yourself, whether it be advance directives, whether it be a living will, whether it be a will, whether it be, appointing someone to handle your disposition. There are legal documents that you can put in place that make sure that the funeral home knows that we are dealing with the person that's authorized to direct disposition. In Maryland, if someone is unclaimed from a hospital, or the family doesn't contact the funeral home or something like that, or it's an unattended death, the loved one is sent to the Maryland State Anatomy Board. The Maryland State Anatomy Board, does their due diligence, tries to make contact with next of kin. If after 7 days or 10 days, they don't make contact with anybody, the person is considered abandoned and unclaimed. And what they do is they look and they evaluate the individual, the decedent, and if they're eligible for donation or any type of medical research programs, they go through those programs. At the end of the programs, the Anatomy Board has a contract with a couple crematories in Maryland. The remains are sent to the crematories, they're cremated, then the cremated remains are returned back to the Anatomy Board, and then once a year the Anatomy Board has a service of remembrance where they purchase a grave at a state cemetery, and they purchase a vault, and they take all of the temporary urns and place those unclaimed individuals into the vault and then bury it. Just as a way to make sure people are dignified and, there's something. And then if someday there's ever a family that shows up, there is a place where they can go and pay their respects to their loved ones if they would wish. Now, the families, if after the fact, after cremation's completed and things like that, a family cannot go back to the Anatomy Board and petition to have the remains brought back to the family because the state has already paid for everything, and the Anatomy Board, essentially at that point, everything belongs to the state of Maryland. So I don't know what happens to the remains here in York County.
I know that there were talks of like a mass burial. I don't know that ever happened. I don't know. I know at our funeral home, I have 2 sets of unclaimed remains, and our attorney has told us, once you get up to 10 sets of unclaimed remains, which I pray to God that never happens. He says, purchase a plot, have them buried. And of course we do our due diligence. We attempt to reach out to the families multiple times. We send emails, text messages, phone calls, whatever. But if they don't respond, they don't respond. Now, in, say 5 years or 10 years, when we go to bury these cremated remains, if the family comes back to us then and they want those cremated remains, our attorney has advised us that family is now responsible for the grave opening cost if they want them back.
Oh, so now I've never done disinterment of cremated remains. So I'm wondering if you would have to go through the same process as if you were doing disinterment for full body remains.
I don't know, but they would be responsible for legal costs if they're, that's
because if you do full body disinterment, sometimes you have to get approval from local health departments. You have to get, permits. And I mean, it's a whole ordeal.
Have you ever done a disinterment?
I've done several.
Really?
Yep. I did one with the Department of Defense for a KIA back from World War II, where we actually had to partner with like an archaeologist and a pathologist. And I mean, that was a whole ordeal. Disinter from a national cemetery. And then the whole reason is they discovered more bone fragments that belonged to that soldier who was killed in action. Okay. So they disinterred the remains. The remains were then taken out of the old casket back from the early 90s and placed into a new casket and then shipped out to a laboratory where the remains were tested against the remains that were found. And then all the remains were then they make them very presentable and put back into a new casket. And then the remains are sent back home. And then another funeral service is held with military honors and reinterred.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does the VA cover the cost of the new casket?
100%.
Okay.
And it's the federal government. I don't know if it's the actual VA or whatnot, but it's the federal government. But yeah, it is. There are so many pieces to that puzzle and especially when dealing with the federal government. For a private interment or disinterment, I did one probably back in 2015 out of a mausoleum
Okay.
where literally the widow was moving from Maryland to Florida, and she wanted to take her husband with her because she was not going to come back here and be buried. So she bought 2 more mausoleum spaces in Florida, and she wanted her husband to be there with her when she passed away. And we had to go and petition the local health department to get a permit for the disinterment. There's tons of paperwork you got to file with the local, I think the state's attorney. You've got to put publication in newspapers. And once you have all that, then you have to arrange with the cemetery. The cemetery charges fees, and they even charge like hazmat fees and everything. And we took the casket out of the mausoleum, took it back to the funeral home. That she had to purchase a new casket.
Do you reopen the casket?
Yeah, we had to remove the person from the casket.
Now, why would you need to do that? If they were in a mausoleum, why couldn't you just ship them directly?
The casket still breaks down over time. It was a steel casket, and rust happens, moisture gets in there. That's why if you ever look at mausoleums, if you look at the back of them, you'll see all the vents in the back, and that happens because of gas and things like that builds up. So if you've ever seen the pictures where actually the front of mausoleums have blown off and nastiness is all inside the mausoleum, that's why those vents are there, is to prevent that from happening.
See, I know nothing about disinterments. I've never been involved in one. Are you able to tell us what you saw?
So
if you can, it's okay.
Yeah. So the one for the VA, I won't. I'm not going to go into that one.
Not that one. I'm curious about the other one.
So again, it's skeletal remains. It's skeletal remains. Now I have heard from Dr. What was the old show on HBO? Then he was a medical examiner or something like that. And his name is Dr. Andrew Borden. He had a TV show. Well, he was on a podcast, and I was listening to him talk, and he was actually involved with the disinterment of Martin Luther King. And when he was moved to Arlington, somebody was moved to Arlington. I don't know if it was MLK, but it was a very prominent figure that was assassinated. And they talked about his son was so young, he did not remember anything from attending the funeral. And he wanted to be able to see his dad when they did the disinterment. And that they cautioned him against it. They're like, we don't know the condition of the remains. We don't know this. We don't know that. And come to find out, when they opened that casket, other than just a little bit of like mold that had developed, fully intact, you could have just brushed him off and put him out and ready for viewing and visitation. And he was actually traveling, and he stopped by the funeral home that handled the arrangements. And he's like, hey, I'm so-and-so. I was on the disinterment. He's like, oh, well, my grandfather took care of that arrangement. He's like, well, what did you do? He said, we just knew it was going to be a multi-week process. So we just hit them hard. And, again, when you're going through the embalming procedure, as we're feeling for fixation, if you get somebody that's fixated and, there's no soft spots or anything like that, your embalming is going to hold up. But again, it all depends on, the environment where the person's buried. Are they buried, in a low-lying area where there may be water and stuff like that? So, there's differences to everything. And again, there's different skills that every embalmer has that others may not have.
Right. Yep. I've heard of that as well. I think it was a previous owner of our funeral home. I want to say she was involved in a disinterment when she was in school. And it was someone who had been buried for about 30 years. And when they reopened the casket, they said that there was just a little bit of mold, but they looked, they looked great.
Yeah. And it's, again, I think one of the things they had mentioned, because the gentleman was minority, that he couldn't be buried in a certain part of the section of the cemetery he was buried in. And where the minority section was, it was up on the slope of a hill out of the way. And he said one of the factors that contributed to the preservation being so well is that any water, as rain would happen, was running away from the burial or from the grave. So nothing was gathering or anything like that.
Right.
And again, it's just stuff to think about. It's like I never would have thought of that before. And it's just like that makes sense. So Edward asks, is there a good method both of you use in the arrangement conference? Best practices.
I never use a laptop. I always use paper and a pen. And I've started getting in the habit of, when meeting with the family, we initially sit down at the arrangement conference. I put my paper down, I put my pen down. I say, tell me about so-and-so. I want to know about them. I want to learn about them. I want to know who they were. Talk to me. And we start out with a conversation. But I think having a laptop or an iPad and you're sitting there typing while listening to a family, I think that's incredibly unprofessional. And there's a disconnect with the family. That's just my opinion. So that's one of my best practices.
I don't ever like to sit across from a desk. I like to, we set it up like pretty much like a dining room table type setup. Yep. It's more relaxed. I'm probably going to get my butt chewed out for saying this, but I do not wear a jacket when I'm making arrangements with a family. I'll be in a shirt and tie, but I do not wear my jacket. I want them to feel relaxed. I want them to feel relaxed. I don't want them to, because most times when someone comes in and makes arrangements with you, what are they wearing?
They're casual.
Mm-hmm. And if you're dressed to the nines in a suit and tie, what type of message do you think mentally you're sending to them?
See, we do ask that. Well, Chad, he's our only male director. We ask Chad to wear a suit and tie.
I'll wear a shirt and tie. I'll wear a shirt and tie, but I won't wear the jacket. You know what I mean? Yeah. It just, again, I want them to be comfortable. So I want to give them the impression that, hey, we're just here to talk. We're not here to, yes, is it at the end of the day a business transaction? Yes. But does it need to feel like you're sitting there trying to apply for a loan or something like that? No. And it's just, again, it's having a conversation. Don't script your arrangements with a family. Because again, I said it in Catherine's earlier video, people can very quickly see and sense out someone that is fake and phony. So just be yourself. As you're going through your internship or your apprenticeship, sit in with as many funeral directors as you possibly can. And then take something from each of them and make it your own. But make it your own. Don't try and copy someone else.
I think there are certain situations as well where you can pivot. The one that comes to mind for me was I got a call for a young mother, and she had 2 younger children, and I knew the grandmother was going to be coming in to the arrangements with the two children, two daughters. And I thought, it was a Saturday, and I'm like, I can guarantee you this is the first time these girls have ever been in a funeral home, and I want to make them comfortable. And so I really thought about this. And I finally decided, you know what? I'm not going to dress up. I'm not going to wear a dress. I'm going to wear jeans, and I'm going to wear a nice sweater. And when I opened up that back door and the 2 younger girls came in, I almost saw the sigh of relief.
Yes,
it's a normal person. It's a normal person. And they
said
that
we are.
Yeah, thank you for making this so normal. But I felt like the suit or the black dress would just give off those, the vibes that I didn't want to give off.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too. You got to be able to read your room. If you're dealing, you got to be able to read the room. You got to be able to know the family that you're dealing with. During that first call, it's very important to establish rapport. And I'm sure what, probably during the first call, having conversations with these two individuals, that you started getting a sense of their personality, who they were like, and things like that. Now,
Yeah.
if it was, 90-year-old lady that is still wearing pearls and she's dressed to the nines and stuff like that, even when she goes to the grocery store, yeah, have your jacket and your tie on. But,
Right.
if you got, salt of the earth people that just, want to be down to earth, that's who they want in a funeral director. They want to be able to see that it's someone that can relate to them. You don't want to ever feel like you're speaking down to someone or looking down your nose at them. Never trying to sit high. There's a lot of things, and it just comes from trial and error and learning from those opportunities. I don't like to ever say mistakes, but learning from those opportunities.
Right. I'm going to grab orange juice. I'll be right back. Keep going though.
Let's see. Jason said, my professor was buried in Marcella's casket. I asked in class if it was veneer. The department chair said Mike would strangle you if he heard you ask that question. Yeah, if you find a Marcellus that is veneer, you do not have a Marcellus casket. So they are absolutely beautiful caskets, but they are very, very expensive. And I actually don't know, because I don't think the Marcellus company, I don't believe, is still around. So I don't know who took the patent for Marcellus. All right. So Jamie says, how do you prepay for a funeral when the funds are in a life insurance plan? So that depends. I'm assuming you're saying that the money you would want to prepay if you came in and met with Catherine or myself is already in a insurance policy that would have a death benefit when the person passes away. I know I do not. You can pre-plan and pre-arrange funeral services, but you cannot use that life insurance to pre-fund to lock in today's prices. I don't know. Certain funeral homes may, certain funeral homes may not. I know I do not do that here. Catherine, do you guys do that in Redline?
Nope.
Yeah. And
No.
reason being is we are not holding those funds in trust to where the interest would offset the shortfall that the funeral home will have when the pre-need goes at need. And that can get very convoluted. So I hope that makes sense for you.
And people will often say to us too, we can make a funeral home the beneficiary of the policy. Well, that's all well and good, but you can change that at any time.
Mm-hmm. So 1035 exchange. Catherine, you're studying for your insurance license. Do you know what a 1035 exchange is?
You know what? I haven't gotten there yet. You answer this one. Keith, if you're watching this, Keith is the one that's hooked me up with my studying material, and I haven't done a damn thing with studying.
So 1035 exchange, you would have to verify with the pre-need company if they would accept the 1035 exchange, and go from there. But it really depends. But that's only if it's a cash value. So if it's a term policy, that's not going to build a cash value. It's only going to have a death benefit.
See, you're so knowledgeable. I think I really should just give you the blonde wig and you take the exam for me. You can totally do it.
We'll give it a chance. Well, we'll give it a dance. We'll see what'll happen for you. Like I said, the craziest part about most of that is that everything that you're going to be tested on has nothing to do with pre-need funeral arrangements. It's all is because by having the license, you can sell full life insurance products and things like that to someone if it was ever brought up for whatever reason. I've never done that though.
And for anyone who is watching that's in mortuary school, that's very similar to mortuary school. A lot of what you are going to learn, you will never use again.
And I've said it before, and again, this is something I will die on my soapbox saying, and mortuary school prepares you to pass the national board exam. Mortuary school does not, you know, teach you the ins and outs, the day-to-day operational parts, and that's stuff you should learn during your internship or your apprenticeship. But sadly, a lot of the times, um, especially old school funeral directors, they look at it as, oh, I went through total, for lack of better words, hell during my internship and my apprenticeship. So that you, in order for you to,
Yeah.
earn your stripes, so to speak, you're going to have to go through that. And that's not what your internship or your apprenticeship should be about. It should truly be about preparing you to be the best funeral director, the best embalmer that you can be for the families that we're going to serve. So all we're doing by putting people through the ringer is a disservice to the families that they're going to eventually serve, because 9 out of 10 times they're going to end up leaving your funeral home because you treated them so badly, you treated them like garbage, you ran them ragged, you burnt them out, and they're going to either leave the profession or they're going to end up going to another funeral home, and they're going to have a hard time getting a job because they're going to not know what they should have learned during their apprenticeship. So all we're doing is a disservice to the profession.
I went through that and I was told, well, I wanted to see what you could handle. Oh, I can handle it, but I also have a choice. And I left.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't matter what I can handle or what I can't handle.
Yeah.
If it's a true team atmosphere, it shouldn't be one person handling everything. And here's the thing. Your business is going to suffer because you're going to take the apprentice and say, hey, go down there. Because here's the thing. It's not going to be the straight case that they're going to have the apprentice take care of. It's going to be the full post or the gift of life donor. And guess what? Because they're never really taught that in school. Yes, you're taught the book knowledge. And you ever hear that old saying, there's people that are book smart and there's people that are street smart. And, by getting the experience underneath them, by them learning from someone that knows what the heck they're doing, yes, then they're ready to tackle that obstacle on their own. But you're not just going to, send someone out there and be like, here, figure it out. Because, again, your business is going to suffer. The families are going to suffer. And that's the worst part. Let's see.
So I'm good for about 10 more minutes, I think, and then I'm going to head out to the beach.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, just a lot of people just saying, oh, okay. So Dan, Batesville purchased the Marcellus patents from SCI in 2003. Are they still manufacturing them? Yeah, somebody asked if made a comment about their mortuary professor being buried in a Marcellus casket, and the student asked in class if it was veneer or not. And I was like, you ever find a Marcellus that's a veneer? It's not a real Marcellus. So Helen says, I'm guessing if she has wishes that my brothers can't come to my funeral, would they be allowed in? If you place an obituary in any type of official publication stating that the family will receive folks from X to X, or services are on this time or that is a public invitation to anyone.
Yep.
So we cannot sit there and say, no, someone cannot come in. Now, if you choose to have everything remain listed as private, then we can control access to and from the funeral home, because it would be considered our property, and it's not a public event, and that's a horrible word to say. But I'm not sure about churches, and I'm not sure about cemeteries, because we don't have control over those properties.
Yeah. I've had some families express concern to me about certain family members showing up to the funeral service. And I do find that most people know how to act at a funeral service. They know there's a time and place. Um, the last one I can think of, it was great. Had I not known that there were, some family rifts and, tension, I never would have known. Everything was great.
Yeah.
But yeah. And as far as obituaries, I want to talk about that a little bit. I don't know about you. I'm finding more and more families are choosing not to place an obituary or a death notice.
Mhm.
If it says services and burial will be private at the convenience of the family with us in our obituaries, that typically means services and burial are private. They're not going to be announced to the public. Family is going to be responsible for inviting who they want to come to the funeral service. Or maybe in most cases for us, it means cremation, and family will have a service on their own at a later date. But in the last week and a half, I have had 5 families say we want no record of anything, no death notice, no obituary, nothing. Nothing. So
Now,
it's their choice.
from the feedback, from the feedback from them, was it cost related, or was it just they did not want to put anything out?
They wanted everything very private. They did not want anyone to know anything.
And
Yep.
I've had 2 or 3 families down here, and a lot gets sticker shock. So when they say they want to put an obituary in a newspaper or a publication, and I say, okay, that's fine. What we're going to do is once we put the obituary together, I'm going to get a draft and I'm going to get a price quote back from that publication. And before, we process your payment, I will call you and, let you know what that's going to be and get permission from you.
Right.
And I'm getting, they're not abnormally long or anything like that, but $600-700 a day for a 1-day run in like the Aegis in Harford County. That families just don't see the value in that.
Yeah.
And I get more folks actually just asking to, would you just put it on your website? Absolutely. And then we can put it on our social media and you can share it out from them.
Yeah. With the York Daily Record and the York Dispatch, where we are, I find an average obituary is anywhere between $400 and $600. Now,
and that's a 1-day run.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like, I'm looking at our website now. Addie and Chad, of course, they've been working with the families over the last 10. No, how long have we been away? 11 days. They're starting to get obituaries up on our website. But what we've done for these individuals is we've ran death notices in the paper. So that's a short notice. It's a 1-liner notice, their name, their age, the city where they lived. And then that tells the public that these people have passed. Maybe they go to Google and they'll type in their name and and type in the word obituary after that. And then our website pops up. So they know that there's an obituary on our website. But these families have, maybe opted not to put an obituary in the local newspapers because the costs are pricey. And actually, I had one family one time down at Harkins, Chris, before you started. I think the obituary up in York, the York Daily Record and York Dispatch, it was like $400. I went to go submit it to the Baltimore Sun. It was $2,100.
Yeah.
And I called the family and I said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And they were like, "Absolutely not."
Yeah, no, never mind. That's like, again, Jacqueline makes a good point. I remember when death notices and certain obituaries in certain publications, if they were smaller papers, were absolutely free. But there are some funeral homes that like to try to use it as free marketing and take advantage of the free services offered by the publication, and the publications just say, no, we can't do this anymore. And one bad apple ruins for everybody else.
Yeah, Jacqueline, we used to be able to submit death notices to our local paper at no cost up until about 1.5 years ago. But there was a funeral home in our county that was running names in the newspaper for a month. And I don't know about you, But say, for example, I lost a child or I lost my spouse, I would not want to open up the newspaper every single freaking day for a month and be reminded that I lost someone dear to me. And seeing that funeral home using that as a way to market and get their name out there. We run a death notice one time, and that is it. But that would irritate me as a consumer and a family member. But it stopped because the newspapers saw what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. And Dee Dee, I think it's by column inch is what the charge comes to. And then also if like you want a photograph or an emblem or something like that, it adds to that cost.
Ours, I thought it was per line. I don't know. I was always told per line.
Holy, all right. Jim Covey is in here. So Jim is a funeral director out of Carroll County. And I think Jim might be retired now, or if he's still involved, but he owned Burrier Queen Funeral Home. So it's good to see Jim. And he says, yes, that is the Baltimore Sun. Crazy, even with the short information, with the name and service information only, was close to just $400. Shh, I got you, bud. I got you, bud. Hopefully you're out there enjoying a good cigar and playing some golf today. I know it's a little overcast, but hopefully you're having a good day. All right. So, hey, I do got to talk to you, but I'll send you some messages. So I had somebody else. I know we've got a packed month. We've got Ryan on the 16th, and then we've got Nathan on the 21st, which I'm really excited for both of those. But Georgianne Bender offered to come on and talk about, like marketing and, stuff like that for like actual funeral homes, because she was big into that retail space. I think I've told you about her before.
I don't recognize the name.
When you guys went to NFDA, I told you if you get the chance to go to her lecture there, go ahead and see her.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I didn't, but I remember now. Okay.
So she's available to stop in and have a chat the end of the month, the last week of the month. I told her I would talk to you, see what we have, what you have on your schedule, and see if we can make it work. And then we also need to talk about August for Dwayne, because we have him scheduled, but you, I think you're going to be in the middle of the ocean.
I will be. Yes.
So
God forbid we take a vacation. I did have a director reach out to me. I wasn't going to say anything, but I did have a director reach out to me on my Wagner Elfenberg page. And it was basically that we shouldn't be putting it out there that we're on vacation, and that we are basically the money that we've spent to go on vacation was made from, grieving families and this and that. And I'm like, first of all, I'm never going to hide who I am. I'm not going to minimize and make myself small to make others feel comfortable. We are all entitled and allowed to take vacations in life and live our lives the way we see fit. We take 2 vacations a year. I'm not going to sit here and try and justify it, but it was a little surprising to get that comment. In fact, Tim's on here, and Tim and I were going back and forth about this. I sent him the message and I said, I really can't believe I just received this message. But also too, on our business page, we do talk about our family. We do share, life behind the scenes and what it's like to have a family in funeral service with our children, and going away on vacation was part of that. But they did not think that was appropriate that I shared that we were at the beach. And I'm like, come on. I would go insane if I couldn't get away every now and then.
So politicians that, make money from our tax dollars, that are our representatives and stuff like that, when they share stuff that they're away with their family, are they bad people?
Right.
Anybody, we all work, we all show up for a paycheck, and then what I choose to spend that paycheck on, and this is going to be, how do I say this? It's none of anybody's business. If I choose to share something, who are you to judge, me being able to spend time with my family? God forbid. You guys, people don't see what we go through day in and day out. They see one small speck of everything. And then they don't understand the true behind the scenes stuff, that, people have this misconception that everyone's rolling in all this revenue. And let me explain. Revenue does not mean profitability. Okay? So people need to understand that. And if you need to go back and take a business class, let me know, and I will be glad to set up a webinar and be able to explain to you, revenue versus profitability and things like that. Because I'm tired of hearing that stuff. I really am. We have the right, just like anybody else does, to be able to go and enjoy a vacation and time away with our families. It's absolutely absurd. It really is. I'll get off my soapbox on that before I get us in trouble.
All right. I'm going to head down to the beach.
All right. You have a great day. And then we'll see if we can squeeze Georgianne in here at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And I will talk to you later. And everybody, thanks for joining. Don't forget, July 16th. You are not going to want to miss it. If you are a funeral director, if you are an apprentice, if you are an intern, if you're in mortuary school, if you are interested, you want to be here for Ryan. You do not want to miss that show. And then you turn around and get us again on the 21st, which I don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday, and we're going to have Nathan Morris, and you are not going to want to miss that show either. So
I'm reading some of these comments coming through. They're funny. All right. Well, enjoy your day. Thanks for hanging out here with us, guys. It's been 2 hours of just talking, and we appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to hang out with us.
Bye, guys.
See ya.